Well, again, thank you everyone for joining us for this, the second session in our 2026 planning webinar series. Today, we're focusing on subject change forms and how you can manage mid-year subject changes specifically today with less admin, better tracking, and smoother communication between students, coordinators, and guardians. If you missed last week's session on staff intentions forms, please email us at info@schooldata.com.au if you don't have access to the recording, and we'll point you in the right direction. I highly recommend watching that first if you haven't already. There are plenty of features today that we kind of skim over because we are building on concepts introduced in last week's webinar. There is kind of an assumption, if you like, that you have watched last week's webinar. So, why do we think you should use our subject change forms? Well, subject changes can be chaotic, especially mid-year. You've got students requesting swaps, coordinators manually checking eligibility, and admin staff trying to keep track of who has and who has not been approved. Our subject change forms solve all of this by creating a structured, trackable workflow. Single sign-on means that once you have added students to the form, they can simply use their school email address to access the subject change form. They complete the form, press submit, and if you're using our new Guardians approval feature, an email is automatically sent to the guardian of the student who has requested the subject change. The guardian then simply clicks the link and they can view a read-only copy of the form. If they scroll to the bottom, there is room for them to enter a comment, and then they simply need to press the authorize or reject button. And yes, this is a very new feature, and we will roll this across to Australian spelling in the next 24 to 48 hours. Then when you're processing the changes, you get a record that looks like this. You can see the student who has submitted the form. You can see the date and time that they submitted the form, along with their change request, guardian authorization, and any guardian notes. We'll explain how to use this form report in a little bit more detail shortly. Now, as you can see, one of the most powerful features this year is this new ability to automatically email guardians when a subject change form is submitted. To enable this, you're going to need guardian email addresses in the master students table. Now, if you're going to do this manually, this could take months. Far and away, the fastest way to do this is using the export merge feature that I discussed last week. I'm going to show you how to do this now. I'm going to show you very, very quickly. So I would urge you to re-watch this section of the video repeatedly. This is a feature that's going to save you countless hours in the future in school data and outside school data. It's an Excel feature. And so to begin, I'm going to go to the three dots here and I'm going to export my master students table to Excel. Now I'll just resize these columns so you can see what's going on. I'll double click here and I will control and scroll down to make the whole page a little bit smaller. I just want you to be able to see this email guardian one field here, but I also need you to be able to see the student code over here. Okay, so let's assume you have a table that has the student code in one column and Guardian 1 email addresses in column B and maybe Guardian 2 in column C if you'd like to send this to both guardians. If you're not sure where to get these email addresses, they should live in your school database, and so your database administrator should hopefully be able to help you out. Just ensure, please, that you get the student code in one column and the email address in another. Okay, so I'm just going to bring this table across with Control C, and I'm going to paste this over here in column V with Control V. Now I'll just make this a little bit wider so we can see what's going on, and I'll shrink the page. Now the odds are that in your list, the order here is not the same as the order over here. And so it's not just a case of finding the student, copying and pasting them, especially if you've got 1,000 students. So we need a formula, and we need the formula in this Guardian column. I won't explain the formula in too much detail today because that's not the purpose of this, but it's an index match formula if you want to do any more reading on it. So I'm going to press in cell O2 here, I'm going to press equals index, and the column that we want to index, the column that we want to look up is W here, and it's this Guardian1 email address column. I'm going to press comma and type match and open brackets again. And now the lookup value for cell O2, for Guardian1 for Lucas, the lookup value is this student code in A2. Now I'm going to press F4 1, 2, 3 times, and I'll explain why I've done that. See how it's put the dollar sign before the A? Basically that means A is now absolute. So no matter where we drag this formula, it's always going to look in column A for this lookup value. I didn't lock the 2, so that means that when I drag this down, the rows will increment. When I drag it down to row 3, that will change to A3. Okay, I'm going to press comma, and now it says, where's the lookup array? Where am I going to find this value? Which column am I going to find this 1056 in? And it is column V. And I'm going to press F4 once to lock both V's. So it is always going to be column V where we're looking up this student code, regardless of where we drag or copy or paste this formula. I press comma and I press 0. 0 means we want an exact match. We don't want to find a student code that's approximately 1056. It must be exact. Now I'll press close brackets. I'm closing the match brackets, close brackets again to close the index brackets. And because we're going to drag this formula around, and because it's an array formula, I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and press Enter. And you can see that it has now pasted the first Guardian email address in here. It's not because it's first, it's because it matches this 1056. It just so happens that I have got the first 10 or so students from this list. Now, if I drag this across, I will get the second parent. And the reason that works is because I locked the A here. And also it's now looking up column X. It's indexing column X, which is where my second Guardian email address lives. Now, if I grab both of those and I'll put the cursor in the bottom right corner of that cell so it turns into a black cross, and let's drag this down to column, let's go to about row 16 or so. Now, what you're going to notice here is that all the ones that it found in my table over here are populated, but if it didn't find them, there's an NA here. And so there's two very, very important final steps here. Firstly, in here, if you look in the formula bar, these are just formulas. They're not actual values yet. That means that if we delete this column here, all of these values disappear because they weren't actual values. They were just referencing another column. So I'm going to press Control Z to undo. And now what I need to do is I need to turn these into values. So I'm going to highlight them all, press Control C, and then I'm going to hold down Alt, press H for Harry, V for victory, and V for victory again. And what that does is it pastes just the value it found. And so you can see here up the top in the address bar, or the formula bar, sorry, that these values are now actual text rather than formulas. Now, the second important thing I need to do while I'm still highlighted here is I need to get rid of these NAs. I'm just going to do it with a find and replace. So Control F, and you can see here that I'm looking for #n/a. I'm going to replace it with nothing, and I'll press replace all, and you can see that it's made 10 replacements. Now I'm going to close that and close this. Now, one of the great features of the school data tables is that you can simply merge this back in, and as long as it finds this student code, it will bring in any other additional detail that you've added. And in this case, it's going to bring in these Guardian email addresses. Now, we can't do it with these fields over here, so we're going to delete these columns here. That won't affect anything anymore because we have values over here. I'm going to press Control S, and all that does is it saves my table. I'm going to press yes, I want this to stay as a CSV. This simply saves my table back to the downloads folder where I downloaded it. I'm not going to close it. You don't need to with school data tables. I'm going to simply go back to my master students table, and I'm going to press the three dots again. I'm going to press merge. I'm going to browse for my file in my downloads. Then I'm going to press merge. OK. And processing is complete. Now make sure you press commit records to database. That's your final check to make sure you're doing what you intend to do here. This will take another 5 seconds or so. And all records have been imported successfully. And so what you'll see here now, the Guardian emails are populating these fields here. Okay, so we've headed back to the matrix planning screen here, and the buttons we want to press today are SC2 for subject changes for semester 2 of the current year. Now, once again, your table here will only show active forms, and we've got one active form in here. If you've built forms previously, and this goes for every table, and you can't see them in here, it's probably because the dates are not active at the moment, or for the current year in this case. If you press show all, you will get all past forms showing up in here. Now, one thing that I neglected to mention until the very end of last week's video, so I'm going to mention it straight off the bat here today, is that you don't have to build a form from scratch. Subject change forms don't take that long to build, and so you may want to, but if you'd like us to load a template in for you, then just us and we will do that. If, however, you want to build one from scratch, as you would have heard last week, simply press the new entry button and this will launch the wizard. I'm going to call this one 2025 mid-year subject change form. And I will copy that to the title as well. Make sure it is a subject change form and press save. That launches step 2 of the wizard. Once again, as you would have heard last year, the metadata at the top of the form, you've got options here about which fields you'd like the user to see. I think full name is enough. They're logging in with single sign-on, so it's definitely their account. It's reassuring to see their name at the top of the form, though. You may want to put year level current in as well. Now, I'm just going to talk about these fields down at the bottom left here. The form units, I use them for subject selection forms, but not for subject change forms. With subject selection forms, you've got really strict criteria. You want them to submit a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 7 units or subjects or whatever the case may be. With subject change forms, however, you just want as much information as possible. And for some students, that might mean they'll just submit one unit that they want to move out of and one unit they want to move into. But for other students, they might end up having 2 or 3 options that they want to move into in case their first option's full or not running or something like that. It's a little bit more fluid, and I don't think there's really much need to use these fields down here for subject change forms. Multiple submit's a really interesting one. It's very new, and so I've done a lot of thinking about it over the last few weeks. This basically means, do you want your students to be able to access a brand new clean form multiple times and submit it? Now, if you think about something like teachers submitting excursion applications, you would definitely need multiple submit. A biology teacher might submit a form that says, I'd like to take my year 11s to the zoo. And then a few weeks later, they might submit another form that says, I'd like to take my year 10s to ScienceWorks, for example. Now, you don't want them re-editing the same form and overwriting the zoo excursion details with the ScienceWorks excursion details. So in that instance, you would definitely want to tick multiple submit. With student forms, however, I would argue that if you design your form in a versatile way, students should only have to access and submit one form. They may submit that one form repeatedly. They may change the details on that form, but essentially you just want one form that lists all of the changes and all of the details that that student needs you to know about their request. And so I'm going to leave this blank. Contact me if you'd like more details about this. Now, I don't need to press save because I'm working forward through the wizard. Form dates. Now remember, in here you'll need to make it active before students can see this, so it's not a bad idea to leave that checkbox until last, along with a couple of other steps in here like form audience that we'll talk about in a second. But dates you can set now. So I'm going to say this is going to be open from the 10th of June 2025, and I'll say 9 a.m. is when I'd like this to open. I would like it to close a week later on the 17th of June 2025, and I'm going to tell the students on the form that it closes at 4 p.m, but in reality I'm going to leave it open till 6 p.m. Close on submit just means that their form will close when they press the submit button. Okay, form audience. Now, once again, I would suggest leaving this to last, but I'll show you how to add members here. Let's say this form is for students who are currently in year 11. I would suggest using the advanced filter and saying, I want to look in the active column for a tick, and I want to look in the year level current field for something that equals 11. Now I'll press apply filter, and that shrinks my list down to 145 students. I'll press the selected all and tick all, and they're all ticked here. Now they are added to the form. I can just press back to Form Wizard and they will appear here in the audience. Now, form approvals. Here is where some magic happens. Let's say I only want to email Guardian 1 here, and I need the email to say something when the Guardian receives it. And so once again, we have a template for you. If you're planning on using these forms and you would like this email template, please yell out. We will probably add these to your drop-down box here anyway over the next day or so. So I click this. Now this is a very early version of this module, and so at the moment you need to press save. Oh, and it tells me, now this is important, it tells me all of the students who are missing a Guardian 1 email. Now, ideally you won't have just imported 10 students' Guardian emails, and so your list will be much shorter or non-existent, hopefully. But this is a great warning to tell you who won't actually be able to forward their subject change form off to a Guardian for approval. Now in this version here, to get the template to show up, you need to leave the page and then come back to it. But don't worry, again, over the next 24 hours, this will be automatically populating in here so you can see what's going into the email template. So this is our template, and in a second I'll show you how to change it. It says, Dear Parent Guardian. This part here is vital. This must stay in your form. This is the bit that goes and looks up the student's full name. Similarly, this here must also stay in your form. You can move it around, you can place it in different areas of your email, but you must have this Guardian approve link if you would like the Guardians to be able to click it and approve the form. In a minute, I'll show you how to change the wording of the rest of the email, especially this part down the bottom. You probably want to replace this with your name or on behalf of the college, for example. Let's have a quick look at how to replace the text in here. So I'm going to jump out of this wizard very quickly. I'll press save and return. And in your admin table on the left-hand side, you're going to see email template admin. If you press this, you'll get a list of all of the templates in your portal. Now, if you press edit, these up here are just notes to give you an idea of how these sections need to be composed. But down the bottom, you have the subject of the email here, and you also have the mail body. And so you can do whatever you like with this. Just bear in mind, you must have this Guardian approve link and you must have this student full name somewhere in your mail body. If you alter this and press save, then that will be updated in your email template list. If you want to keep this one here, but you'd like to create a second template, you can press this insert button here, and what you'll notice is it actually gives you all of the details from the first email. You can change these and create another template that you might like to use. Okay, so let's jump back into the form wizard. If I want to jump back into the wizard from here, I simply click the edit, the pencil icon over here, and I'm back into the wizard. So we've had a look at form approvals here. Form rules I'm going to skip. This school here doesn't actually have any rules, but next week you will see a full list of form rules when we move on to subject selection. You'll have stacks of rules for subject selection forms, but it's unlikely you'll have any for subject changes, especially in year one. You can create approval rules. A student must have studied year 10 biology in order to select year 11 biology or something like that. But for the sake of brevity today, and given that we are going to cover these in a lot of detail next week, I'm going to skip over this. So we move to form build. And once again, because this is a new form, you can only see the metadata section at the top of the page here. Given that we explained how to make a form from scratch last week in the Staff Intentions Form webinar, today I'm going to show you a form that we have prepared earlier. Okay, so here is a form that we built previously, and this is the build screen. So of course you can see all the add, edit, and delete buttons over here. I'm sure you have your own ideas about how you'd like the form to look and what you'd like it to say, but just in case you're starting from a blank canvas, here are some things that I've found have worked well in the past. I'll start with a series of labels here, and if I press edit next to one of these, you can see that the field type down here is label. Just describing reasons why it might not be possible to accommodate the student's request, class caps, classes not running, clashes, and those kind of things. Then I have some notes here that have been formatted, really making it clear when the form is due and when the form will be processed. And the formatting might have caught your eye here. Remember the trick I mentioned last week. I simply type my sentences into ChatGPT and ask it to provide some HTML tags to make the text stand out on the page. I have a section here where the student is allowed to select one subject, and you can see the minimum is 1 and the maximum is 1. One subject they'd like to move out of. And if we press edit here, you can see that I've activated the min picker, but not, or the min max picker, I should say, but not the min max units. Now, the difference is the min max picker means they must have a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 1 subject, one item, if you like. Units would actually go back to the master subjects table, and it would look up the number of units for each subject, and you could set a minimum and maximum units. Now for semester 2, it really shouldn't matter because there's only 1 unit remaining regardless of whether a subject is year long or semester based. If they're moving out of French, which is year long, and into art, which is semester based, it's 1 for 1 in semester 2 anyway. If they were moving out at the start of the year, they would need to select 2 units to replace the 2 units of French. You can edit the list to add and remove subjects. And we did cover this last week, but I'll press edit list. What I like to do here is I like to use the tags. Reminder, the tags are set up in your master subjects table, and use export and merge in order to get those tags in. If you've got these tags here and you're filtering through a list of 490 subjects trying to find the 30 or 40 year 11 subjects, all you need to do here is type that tag into the filter if it's specific enough, and it shrinks it right down to show only fields where 11 approval actually exists in the tag. You can make the tag whatever you want, by the way. All right, I'm going to cancel this and go back to our form. Okay, down here I have the subjects into which the students may like to move, and I allow 2 as the maximum. There must be a minimum of 1, you have to move into something, but I allow a maximum of 2, and I instruct the students to drag to reorder them to ensure that their first preference is at the top. Now, if I keep scrolling down, you will see there's room for the students to leave a comment, and this type of field here, if we click edit, is a text area, multi-line text box. I'll keep scrolling down, and I ask them a pretty important question. Now, the reason I ask this is because I don't want to tick multi-submit. If the student wants to make 2 changes, I don't want them submitting 2 completely separate forms. I'd like them both on the same form. They can go back into the same form as many times as they like before the due date and alter it, but I don't want a second form because it's possible that the details on the second form could contradict the details on the first form. So I'd like all the information in one form. But that's where this question is important. I ask, obviously, would you like to move out of a second subject? And if no, just go to the bottom and press submit. But if yes, there are two options and they're radio buttons here. So if you select one and change your mind, the first answer is removed. Option 1, I would like to request a second subject change even if the above request is successful. So that is, I've got two changes in mind, I would like them both. Or I would like to request a second subject change only if the above is unsuccessful. So here's my plan A up the top, but if I can't get that, then here's my plan B down below. And then, of course, there's room down below for them to nominate another subject to move out of. And the minimum must be 0 here, because if they do not want a second change, you don't want them to be forced to put something down in this picker here. And for their in subject down here, once again, I allow 2 as the maximum, but 0 is the minimum. That's very important. Then I have a comment down here that says, if you'd like 3 changes, you must make an appointment to speak with your house coordinator. That's just a school rule whereby this school would like to have a meeting with the students if they want to make 3 changes. Now, because we're in build mode, we can see the approval sections down below, but if I press back to form report and I go back to form review, which is a view of what the students will actually see, not only are all the edit and delete buttons removed, but if we go to the bottom, they don't get that Guardian approval section appearing either. Okay, back to the wizard and back to the form report. And what you can see here is a table that is relatively densely populated. Quite a few change requests have come through here. Now, I'll just talk very, very quickly about what you can see on the screen here. We covered all of the fields off to the right, so I won't go into detail about those again. I just want to talk about these blue buttons here and also this drop down here, and finally the process tick here. Okay, say you have a scenario where the student has submitted a form, but they didn't have a Guardian email address listed, or the Guardian didn't get the email. Maybe it was an old address, or maybe it was picked up in a spam filter. Maybe it's just gone missing and you want to regenerate that email. If you press this blue button here, it will generate the Guardian email. Simply press the button and press OK, and the email will be sent. Here you have room for notes. So say this first student, you wanted to say something like, needed to move from ENG 1101 to ENG 1103. If you press OK, that note will be stored for this student. And you'll see the color changes to indicate that this student has a note. Now, my suggestion, and it's just a suggestion, is that you might like to use these notes as the timetable as comments section on a mail merge. For this reason, if you press the 3 dots and press export, everything on this screen will export, including the notes. If you are using this mail merge option, you probably want to categorize your mail merge letters by firstly whether the request was successful, and secondly, if it wasn't, perhaps the reason it wasn't successful. And so if you go to status, we have hard-coded a few common mail merge categories, if you like. So yes, there was a straight swap. Yes, but class changes are required. No, a clash means it's not possible. No, class caps mean the change is not possible. Or no, it's not approved. If it doesn't fit into this category, you're probably going to have to type a bespoke letter to that student. And so we have an other category for those scenarios. Okay, let's say you are working through this list, and what you will find is the table is sorted by submit date. Once the parent or guardian has gone in and authorized this form, it bundles it with the student's form submission. And so you can see here that the parent has written discussions have been held and approval is authorized. Rather than putting this submission down the bottom of the table and you have to hunt for it, it groups it with this student's change request. Now, a pretty cool feature, if I press the process tick here, and I also finish off processing the student's request by ticking the process tick in the second row, what you'll notice is automatically this student's requests get thrown to the bottom of the pile, the bottom of the submitted pile. If I untick either one of them, they'll get thrown back to the top because it's incomplete. Oh, one thing I did forget to cover, if we go back to form build, I should have mentioned this earlier while we were in here, but I skimmed over it. If we go to these pickers, I suggest that you use a class picker. And I'll very quickly explain how to do that. I'll show you how to do that. If we go to a general question, say you were changing one of these labels up here, field type, you might recall from last week that when we get down to the pickers, these four here, staff intentions previously taught, qualifications and co-curric, they're for staff intentions forms, more or less. These next three are for students. Pre-selection forms, preferences live and preference reserve are for subject selection forms. And class picker is for anything where you just want the audience members to be able to select a class or classes, but you don't want it to feed into preference lists or teacher selectors in planner grids or anything like that. And so I suggest, especially in your first year, just using class picker here. Now, what this means, the implications here, if we go back to the wizard and we move ahead to form stats, is that you won't get any data in the form stats table. Form stats we will cover next week. It is purely for subject selection forms. Live and reserve preferences will be tallied in the form stats table for you. So this is a feature that we will definitely explore in a lot of detail next week. Okay, that is a quick run through of subject change forms in School Data. As always, we're happy to load in templates, whether they be form templates or email templates for you. Just email info@schooldata.com.au if you would like one. Next week's session is on subject selection forms, where we'll extend on a lot of the screens that we just touched upon today. We'll dive into subject selection rules and approvals, preference tracking, and more. Thanks again for joining. Finally, stick around if you have questions. I'll take about 30 seconds now to try to absorb what has been coming through on the Q&A, and I'll do my best to answer these shortly. Otherwise, thanks again, and we will see you next week.